we've raised the industry standard. People are more comfortable today in the industry as a result of folks like them and myself in that regard. People are more comfortable and more productive today than they were in 1983 when I completed my dissertation. And that's the legacy that I'm so proud of to be associated with that.
All right. Hi, I'm Steve Davis, and welcome to today's edition of AtomicErgo. And I'm fortunate here today. I've got I've got a Jerome Congleton, and he's known as Dr. C to a lot of people. There's a lot of folks that he's changed their lives, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But anyway, welcome, Dr. Congleton.
Howdy.
Yeah. It really is such an honor to be here, and you know I met you over a couple of decades ago, and you've always been mentioning me, but you really are a legend, and you know we're going to talk about some of the things that we did to change this industry. So if you would let me bear with me here, and I'm going to put up a slideshow that's got some photos on it. We want to talk about that. But first of all, I want to talk about a little bit about your professional history. Since 2013, you've been as a professor at Texas A&M, and you've also worked as strength coach and conditioning coach for the Texas A&M University. You've been one of the things that I'm well aware of, and for many reasons, but you were the inventor and the designer of the neutral posture chair. And then again, you were a professor at Texas A&M in industrial engineering and safety engineering and health sciences. I know that you largely built that program. I know that from your students, your graduates, and so you were industrial maintenance, engineering maintenance, safety manager for corporate for Alcoa. And then we want to talk about this because leading up to your podcast, I've talked to quite a few people, and when I told them about you as a pilot, F4 pilot, and your career at that, it was people just kind of stand there with their mouth open, because it's one of those things that's kind of unimaginable. You got from Evansville University, BS Industrial Engineering, from University of Arkansas, MS Management, and Texas University, you got your PhD in Industrial Engineering. Professional certifications, you're certified, you're a PE, a professional engineer. You're also you have a certification as a certified professional ergonomist, and then an associate safety professional. So anyway, that's just kind of about this much of what Dr. Congleton's done, and but I did want to touch on that, and we'll get into some of those things deeper. But one of the things we always ask, and this is, with all the things that you did leading up to it, any influences. You've had an incredible, military service, industrial, academic. What experiences most influenced you on your path in ergonomics and human factors?
All right. Before we get into that, I'd like to recognize Rebecca and Liz, my wife. Mm-hmm. And so if you would put those pictures up, would be great. And I want to clarify while you're doing that, I did not graduate from Texas. I graduated from Texas Tech. That's a big difference.
Yeah. Oh, I thought I said Texas Tech. Yeah. Well, I typically don't get too awful nervous, when I conduct these interviews, but you really are a legend. I've had the honor of meeting you many years ago, but what you've done is you set up an industry. So
that is Rebecca Bainick. That's my daughter. I'll put her up against any engineer in the country on her ability to design and manufacture a chair. She has done a wonderful job. She's been doing this for over 35 years. And she couldn't have done that without assistance from my wife, the next slide, Liz. And we've been married 63 years, April 20th. And I have 3 children, Drew, who runs 7 car washes here in Bryan College Station, and another daughter, Katie, who's a counselor at Kemp Carver here in Bryan. So I'm real proud of my family. This is a family-owned company. My wife and daughters own the company, and they remind me that all the time.
There you go. There you go. Anyway, let me flip over to the next slide. And I've had the honor to meet Rebecca. We made a trip to your manufacturing facility in Texas, went through, and I would put her up against any engineer I know as well. But yeah, everybody doesn't have the opportunity to have a father like you. So it's, genetics, and I'm sure.
I didn't hurt them anyway.
No, you didn't. You sure didn't. So anyway, do you want to talk about the chair just a little bit?
Well, let me answer your question. First, if we could go back to me, military service, flying F-4s in Vietnam, the Phantom, it was set me up for success while being shot at. My competitiveness, my courage, and my confidence came into question at that time. And I'm happy to say that I passed the mark. I was never hit by one bullet in 215 combat missions. And so that set me off from an influence standpoint. People that I want to recognize is Jack Martin at Alcoa, who was the personnel manager, and Jim Archibald, who was corporate safety. In terms of academics, I would like to thank Dr. Mo Ayub at Texas Tech, and Dr. Jim Smith at Texas Tech. From a coaching standpoint, Mike Clark, who is the performance coach for the Detroit Lions now, was the strength and conditioning coach at Texas A&M for a number of successful years before that, and that's how I got into coaching at Texas A&M.
Okay. All right. Yeah, just a little bit about that. You were flying the F-4 in the Vietnam conflict.
Yes, I received the Distinguished Flying Cross and 17 air medals. You got 17 air medals by flying a lot of missions that counted more. I was a Wolfpack at Ubon, Thailand, and I flew for every 7 missions I flew with Wolfpack, I got an air medal. Wow. And the reason was because an average flight time for a mission was around 0.8, 0.9 hours. And Wolfpack mission was about 3 to 3.5 hours with 3 or 4 refuelings. Experience and how it helped me later on in human factors ergonomics is if you pull 6 Gs, what does that really mean to you? Well, to give you an example, my trunk weight was about 100 pounds. So pulling 6 Gs, my trunk weight weighed 600 pounds. So there's 600 pounds on you. You don't move much while you're doing that 6G maneuver. If you pull negative Gs, to go back a little bit about that, when you pull negative Gs, the blood comes from your lower body and trunk up into your head. And when you look through your eyes, you're looking through blood because there's more blood in your head than normal. So it has a red haze to it as a vision that impedes your vision, but it doesn't stop your vision. But that's the difference between negative Gs and positive Gs. You come off the C-pan with a negative G, even though you're down tight against it, everything floats up in the air. So if a mechanic leaves a screwdriver or a pair of pliers or something, or water bottle in the airplane, it comes floating up by your head, and you try to grab those things when you're testing the aircraft out for an inspection. That's how you find some of the things that were left in the airplane inadvertently. My fighter pilot experiences, the cockpit was crammed with instruments, and that's how I got to know human factors up front and in person, because another thing that happens to you when you pull Gs is that you have tunnel vision. In other words, your vision, instead of having peripheral vision, all you got is tunnel vision in front of your eyes.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the F4, for the people out there that don't know what it was, and I didn't either, I actually went and researched it. How fast? I know it's extremely fast, but how fast? And this was back in the 60s, and
yeah, it could go 1.2 times the speed of sound, or 1.2 Mach. That's about 1,300 miles per hour. You
Mhm.
couldn't go very far when you were at 1.2 Mach because you ran out of fuel. It was a fuel hog.
Mhm.
And so you might be able to escape at 1.2 Mach, but you couldn't go very far. So you had to find a tanker after you used the afterburners for a long period of time. And it weighed 58,000 pounds. And so it was a pretty big airplane, and proved you could take a rock and make it fly.
Right. And that explains courage, because if you talked about that there's this, for the people that you don't have the nerve to do that. And, I don't know that I would. I mean, you're zipping along, and yeah, it's that, to step up and understand it from your perspective. That's huge. And I didn't mean to spend so much time on it, but there's just so few people living today that could say they experienced anything like that. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. If you want, if you don't mind, I want to go ahead and flip through the questions. We've got some stuff here. We talk about the biggest challenges in ergonomics.
Some of the biggest challenges is the name ergonomics. My definition of ergonomics is the study of work to prevent and control injury, illness while improving productivity, quality, delivery, customer service, and marketing, and reducing costs. I think where we failed in a lot of cases is we didn't spend the time to determine the increase in productivity like Lean does. Lean does a great job of describing increase in productivity, and I think that we've kind of failed in that regard. Texas A&M has decided to change their name of their ergonomics center to Worker Health to try to overcome that lack of understanding of the term ergonomics and to be more understood by the layman or the general public and industry in that regard. Dealing with workers returning to the office is also a challenge for us because we don't know really what they were sitting in and working in at home. We did not do a good job of videoing or taking photographs of their workstation at home. We didn't know if they were at the kitchen table or on the bed or in the sofa, or what were the actual circumstances that they were working under. We do know that in most cases, working at the office is more productive than working at home. And we also can control the office situation better because we do see them. We do see their workstation set up. We do observe them. We are there in case they have any issues. We've not done a good job in terms of surveying them, in terms of body part discomfort surveys.
Right.
We've not measured their productivity. There's a lot of things that we could have done better. We could have done better in computer-based training. So there's a number of things that are challenges for us in that regard as they come back. See, you put up the slide of the spine. We'll deal with that since it's up there. When you stand, you have a natural curvature of the low back. And if the disc is trying to go anywhere, it'd be trying to go out of the front because the opening in the front of the disc is larger than the narrow opening in the back. It can't go anywhere. The disc can't go anywhere because there's an elastic band around the front of the vertebrae. When we sit, we lose that curvature and don't have equidistant spacing. Now the front of the vertebrae is narrow and the opening in the back is wider. And if the disc is trying to go any direction, it's trying to go out the back and hit the spinal column, the nerve for the spinal column. So somewhere between sitting and standing is equidistant spacing. Well, that's going to occur between sitting and standing. And if we look at the next slide, that occurs at approximately 135 degrees where we have equidistant spacing of the vertebrae. How do we know this? Well, you can check that out with x-rays. And we know that it also is going to be closer to midpoint of range of motion for how far the femur goes back and how far it can go towards your chest. So if we go to the next slide, this is the posture of an astronaut in a weightlessness environment. This simulates when the body is in space and there's no forces acting on it, the body automatically is going to go to this posture. So when we saw the astronauts in space, they were pretty much like this. If they were in any other posture than this, they had to physically move their arms or legs to be in a different posture. If you put your head against the side of a hot tub or a swimming pool, you automatically go into the neutral posture position, all right? So, which is a mini gravity experience, okay? The best, while we're at it, this is also our power zone. When we're in the power zone, if you look at it, it's an athletic posture. Think of this as a middle linebacker on defense for Detroit Lions, for example. That's the posture that he's going to be in. Defensive guard in basketball, that's the posture they're going to be in. Swinging a golf club, that's the posture they're going to be in. Swinging a bat in baseball or tennis, that's the posture they're going to be in. So it's the midpoint of range of motion that gives you where you have the most strength. So the power zone is between your knees and shoulders. That's where you're least likely to get hurt. So no, we don't want heavy things below the knees. We don't want heavy things above the shoulders. Mm-hmm. So if we can keep them from the knees to the shoulders, the likelihood of getting hurt goes down tremendously. Your best night's sleeping, taking a tangent to this, is the neutral posture position. Mm-hmm. You're on your side, you have a long pillow between your legs, you hug a big pillow, you have a pillow under your head, and you're in neutral posture position. That's going to be your best night's sleep. So long pillow between your legs, hug a big pillow, and a pillow under your head. And there you got neutral posture, and there's where you're going to get your best sleep. So sleeping on your back, sleeping on your stomach, that doesn't fit the neutral posture position, and you're not going to get as good a sleep as a result.
Dr. Congleton, I don't mind, if you don't mind, I want to interrupt you for a second. This is, you didn't know anything about this. When, of course, you know, I'm friends with a couple of your former students, and when I told them what we were getting ready to do, they asked if they could jump on for a minute and say hey to you. So I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. We've got some people in the waiting room, if that's okay with you. And
okay,
there we go. Yeah. So anyway, let's see. All right. The two Thomases are here anyway.
Yeah. Hey, Tom.
Dr. C, how are you today?
I'm fine.
Hello.
And it was good seeing you in Orlando.
It was great seeing you in Orlando, man. I'm always excited when I come around the corner and see you in the booth and know I'm going to get a chance to hang out and catch up. So it was 100% my pleasure to see you there.
Hello, Thomas Varghese.
Hello, how are you?
Thomas is working on his PhD. It's always pleasing to me when one of my children become one of the teachers of future people, and they become my grandchildren, and then some of my grandchildren are teaching great grandkids. So it's quite an honor to have those two available and talking to us today.
You have quite an amazing legacy. I was visiting with we had a safety professional move to Georgetown, and I sat down and had lunch with him, and he said, you know what? I'm like a second cousin to you because he studied under Rob Auburn, and he made the connection from you to Rob to, anyway, it was just kind of fun to sit down with somebody that I had literally never met before, and he made that connection.
You got Dr. Alicia Crumpton, Dr. Brian Craig, Dr. Rob Thomas, Dr. Al Amendola, Dr. Lawrence Schultz at Houston. Mm-hmm. All of them are part of my ergonomic family tree and have been teaching ergonomics. Dr. Mark Benden, Dr. Adam Pickens. I got quite a few that are establishing their own ergonomic tree that are now my grandchildren. So it's an honor to see them and meet them and I love talking to them. And they get to meet me and find out how we got ergonomics started at Texas A&M.
It's a great story. I love to chat about it, and I love to seeing you at conferences in the booth and going back to some of those old stories, some of the good old times.
Yes, it was. So I know I actually emailed your grandson Ryan today, Dr. C, on those chairs. So
Thomas is trying to get some neutral posture chairs in Connecticut University of Connecticut, and that's the greatest compliment that I can have.
You can't see it because
I lost you.
Here's a neutral posture chair right here.
That's the neutral posture chair. That's right.
Yep, and another one in my wife's office on the other side of the house. One of the little bitty ones. 2 of them in the house. Hey, we didn't call in to totally derail your interview. We wanted to call in to say just a few words and then kind of slip out, so we're not taking up all of Steve's time.
No, this is good. This is where I'm not a Jerry's kid, but I'm one of Dr. Keith White.
You're an extended piece of the family through Keith.
He introduced me to Dr. Congleton, well, quarter century ago. Yeah, and I don't know if you remember Dr. Congleton. We were at a couple of trade shows, and the first time we met, I had a little booth on the back row. I just founded Ergonauts. Keith was working with me, and you invited me to come down and hang out in your booth, and you had absolutely no reason to do it other than this your Dr. C. But as people come through, I'm standing there with a legend in ergonomics, and you're saying, "Hey, be sure and go by and see Steve at his booth." And I'll never forgot that. It's one of those things where, you didn't have to do it. You could have told me, get out of my booth, whatever. And we said, and you were so generous, and, that's who I've known you to be, and the stories that these folks tell, everybody loves you. So
yes, we do.
I'm eternally grateful for the opportunity to meet with you today, but then also back when I first got in the business, you. So anyway, thank you so much. Yeah, I wanted to tell my little part of the story, and I was that's the reason I'm sitting here today wearing this hat. You were generous, and no reason to be other than this. That's who you are. So
I can completely echo that. I wouldn't be sitting here today if it weren't for you and blazing the path. And Dr. C, I have had this thought and have made this comment repeatedly over the years. You were my first mentor, and in those days when we were working together, traveling back and forth to Austin, et cetera, just truly like a father figure at the time. And I would not be where I am today without you. Great deal of respect for the path that you blazed and the leadership and the example, and even to where I am in this very moment, in that you remember when I came to College Station, sat down with you and Mark Bendon after I left a job in manufacturing and came back into the world of ergonomics. You encouraged me to get back in after being out for a while, and it has been a great 11 years that I've been independent and still making it, and wouldn't be there without you.
I appreciate it.
I could share a story. It was my second job at Alcoa, and I'd actually moved to San Antonio, and I was on plants in Mexico. And when Dr. C heard about it, he called me and said, "Hey, I want to come see you." So he actually came out to Mexico with me. We went to Del Rio, then we crossed over the border, and I took him around my factories in Mexico, and he was there for a day and a half, and we had a great time there. It was fun. It was nice to connect with him and see him, and so thank you very much for that encouragement, even after I graduated.
Where I can support my children and my grandchildren, I do, and I do it wholeheartedly. We were more than professor and student. we're a family, and I'm humbled by your remarks.
Yeah. And one more thing is, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing for you, but I've been sitting in my neutral posture chair for 23 years. And it literally it's in perfect condition. Arms are, I mean, I don't know how you resell them. I don't know how you get new customers. The thing's a tank. And
It is a problem for neutral posture because they don't break. So we have a lab that we try to break the chair, and you can sit on the arm of a chair or big and tall chair because that's where most of the time they break, or they're at the front of the seat pan for a 400 or 500 pound person sitting in a big and tall chair. Our chair is designed not to break.
if you look at the cost on it too, over that period of time, I think I have like $30. I get a new chair every year for $30 because it's
Right.
it's my chair, and it's perfect. So the investment up front is paid off to its minimum. And so anyway, thank you.
We have a very steep discount for Dr. C. Neutral Posture has allowed us. If you're buying a chair individually, you can get one discount. But you have to do that through Neutral Posture. My wife and daughters don't let me do that. Call neutralposture.com, and they would take care of it, and that would be Ken and Coker or Ryan Bainey, which are my grandsons. But they're a tough group to corral sometimes.
They were both at the conference this year. Got a chance to visit with both of them while they were packing up the booth.
Exactly.
All right, guys. Well, you all don't need to exit unless you need to or want to, and we're gonna keep going through the list. I've kind of got out of order, and that's the good thing because the stuff that he shared is great, and I had as many questions as anything. So if you don't mind, we'll go ahead. One of the things on the list, Dr. Congleton, is we talked about what are the biggest challenges, to the office ergonomics, to pressing, and I know in the field. You talked a little bit about when everybody went home, March 2020. There was a study came out, but it was actually the world's largest insurance company, and in October of 2020, 41% of the people who went home were already displaying early signs and symptoms of musculoskeletal disorders. So we were talking about them standing at ironing boards working, sitting back on the couch working, all of those things. Today, as we return into work, and you talked some about that, but what do you think the biggest challenges are, as you see it today?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, ergonomics, the word itself is a challenge. But our biggest challenges are those that are coming back to work and doing this hybrid work, setting up an ergonomic lab, or which we'll talk about later, hopefully. But ensuring those who work remotely have good ergonomics, a good ergonomic furniture and chairs and keyboard trays and monitor arms, footrests. The most important of all is the chair. The chair provides you comfort, but it also increases your productivity. Your body is in contact with it with the seat pan, the backrest, and the armrest. When I first started in ergonomics, I looked at the furniture industry. The arms were not even adjustable. They weren't adjustable in and out. They weren't adjustable up and down. They were fixed. And I remember Noe Palacios from Steelcase telling me that we didn't need adjustable arms, that they put adjustable arms and they didn't use them. Well, of course they didn't use them because they never received any training about the chair. So they roll a chair in there, and whatever was set up for height-wise, tilt of the seat pan or whatever, that's the way they used it. And a lot of them didn't even know that it had adjustments. And so the challenge is, how do we get this into the remote work? I think that everybody should be receiving a body part discomfort survey every 6 months about what's happening with them on their comfort while they're working. And if they know what the problem is, write that down to the side on the questionnaire survey. So I'm a big fan of body part discomfort surveys. I'm a big fan of computer-based training. I'm a big fan of having the remote worker actually being able to order ergonomic equipment for the home.
Right.
That the company sets up that's responsible. The company's still responsible for the person working at home or they're working at work. And I see more people going to be returning to work because that's just the way things are today. And for example, in the federal government, if you don't return to work, then you don't have a job, right? That's how strongly people feel about it. Can you work at home? Yes, you can work at home. But if you work at home, we need to help you work safely, comfortably, and productively. One of the other challenges, Steve, is certified professional ergonomists and retaining current members. But we're probably going to talk about that later on. But that's a challenge today for our society. We were at 800 and stayed at 800 a long time because we were losing them as fast as we were gaining them. Now we're up to 1,100. And so hopeful that they make some changes to try to maintain the membership as well as expand the membership. I think we should be around 2,000 or 3,000 as opposed to 11 or 1,200.
Yeah, that's to move it forward. And there's so few. If you look at that, sounds like a big number, 1,100, but you're looking at that's a global number. That's the people that are available to do the engineering to fix a problem. So yeah, I can see that. So you have 9 patents. What if you had, from your perspective, anything that you're more proud of than others?
The thing that I'm most proud of is the simple posture chair, the ab stool, the big and tall, the sit-stand workstation. UPS made call centers and their corporate headquarters made them all neutral posture chairs. The first call centers to have sit-stand workstations and the neutral posture chair was UPS. I worked for them for 9.5 years as an outside consultant. So I worked in their office environment, call centers, corporate headquarters, and I worked in their material handling. And that's where we learned about power zone. That's where we looked at getting things from below the knees to not above the shoulders. That's why the waggle in the conveyor belt had a stand on it that went up and down, left and right, and you were able to always grab the packages between your knees and shoulders and put it on the conveyor belt that took it out of the semi. It was that kind of an approach, using neutral posture and working between the knees and shoulders, the athletic posture that helped UPS reduce injury illness by 50% in a 5-year period. And they had a number of injuries, but guess what? They also improved productivity because it's a lot easier to lift something between your knees and shoulders and faster than when it's on the floor or above your shoulders. So again, productivity is the thing that end up making the case for having the waggle on the end of the conveyor that went into the semi to move it up and down, left and right. So very, very proud of that. The neutral posture chair has 13 different adjustment features on it. It has 5-way adjustable arms. It has seat height. It has seat tilt, seat slider. It has backrest up and down. It has air lumbar. It has a contoured seat. I'm sitting 8,600 now that has notches into the seat pan itself so that the armrest can come closer for the small female. I actually use what they call an OES arm, which is a big arm that you don't need all the adjustments in the arm because you can have it because it's 3 or 4 inches wide and about 7 inches in length, and also can rotate 360 degrees. So I'm most proud of neutral posture in that that regard because that's what I did for my dissertation at Texas Tech and designing chairs for surgeons to sit in while they perform surgery. Because once they sit down for surgery, they don't get up. They're there for the duration. And that could be hours. It could be tens of hours. And that's why I chose the worst population that had the most difficulty and had the most problems, surgeons. And that's why I came up with the neutral posture concept, which ended to be allow them to sit on a flat black round stool or a neutral posture chair with a contoured seat pan and still have the same posture, not slide out flat, flat round stool.
Yeah, the couple things, and most people you just don't hear it enough. But you talked about increase in productivity, and Tom and I have talked about this, fairly frequently. The thing that most people that don't understand it, when you mentioned the word ergonomics, it's kind of like dragging the anchor, and
right.
That's not the way it is. In fact, you can use a stopwatch to say, okay, yeah, we improved it. Of course, my background's lean, and that you nailed it. And we just don't hear it enough in our profession. And the other thing, I don't think you that the app you talked about, the ab stool. I have one of your prototype ab stools at my house, and yeah, those things they're great. But yeah, I do. I have one of the very first ones. They weren't in production.
Yeah, Rebecca and Rebecca Bainick and Dr. Mark Benden. Mark got his PhD after working for us for 10 years in neutral posture. So we collaborated on a lot of patents, neutral posture, working with Rebecca. And so I want to make sure that he's recognized as being a contributor to our success in neutral posture and to our innovations that we made. Mm-hmm. So together with Rebecca and Mark and a number of my graduate students who end up working at neutral posture for a period of time, we've raised the industry standard. People are more comfortable today in the industry as a result of folks like them and myself in that regard. People are more comfortable and more productive today than they were in 1983 when I completed my dissertation. And that's a legacy that I'm so proud of to be associated with that. And I came up with that design, by the way. I'll just tell you a little story about that. Is I wanted to try an English saddle because Dr. Ayub suggested that they were going to use English saddle for schoolrooms. And I had them do a 30-minute typing test, my fellow graduate students. And when they did the 30-minute typing test, they cursed me at the end of the test because the English saddle was so uncomfortable to sit on because it put all the pressure on the ischial tuberosities of the pelvis. And I had a towel laying on the saddle, and I picked up the edges of the towel, and the pressure went off my ischials. Well, what did I have? Well, I had the old cultivator seat from tractors. Remember the old cultivator seats that they had?
Oh, yeah.
The bar and the spring and the spring. Well, what was that? Well, that was a contour of the buttock thigh when you sit down in the sand. That's the reason we have contour with the seat pan. Some ladies don't like it. Some do. I know that my wife and daughter both sit in a contoured seat pan. It's slightly contoured. It's called the 8600, and it's the most popular chair that we sell.
Yeah, that's and all of these breakthroughs, and I think we talked about at the time the chair had 4 casters, which we called a flip over chair. Right. And I know that you were part of that.
Yeah, it had 4 legs. It wasn't all that stable, and that's the reason it went to 5. And so there's a lot of things. For example, Rebecca was chairman of the BIFMA, which is Business Interior Manufacturers Association. She's the chairman of that and has been in the past. And so we've tried to influence other chair companies and furniture manufacturers to be more ergonomic. That's when all the tables came into play, of adjustable tables, whether it's an electric or hydraulic, or it had pistons, or it was a mechanical adjustment. All of that came about because of neutral posture leading the way to raise the standard for the industry. And I think we've done a good job in that regard, and very proud to be associated with that and neutral posture and my former students who buy chairs.
There you go. I want to change gears here in this second. I always talk about this, and I've been on the stump for a few years about it, but we're looking at there's 77 million baby boomers born 46 to 64. One of us reaches retirement age every 8 seconds. I think if we're looking at a crisis. I think we're looking at when, as that large of a group drops out, number one, they're taking knowledge. But the other thing that they're taking the production capacity, and whatever that production capacity is. Are you seeing any trends? I don't see it overall, but you're in a better position. Or are you seeing trends where companies recognize that we better be doing something now?
Yeah, the baby boomers retiring creates opportunities for young people in the field. We're not producing enough people that the companies need today at Texas A&M. We're only fulfilling half of the need of requests for ergonomists and safety and health people, whether it be at a undergraduate level or a graduate level. Our graduate level people are going out with a 4 courses minor in ergonomics and safety and making $50,000 to $65,000 a year. Our master's students are going out and making $80,000 to $95,000 a year. And so there's a clamor for ergonomics and safety and health people, particularly as all these baby boomers retire. And the people that are teaching our folks here at Texas A&M are primarily industrial engineers. That's the way that it rolls in the School of Public Health and our environmental occupational health program and our worker health center. So great upward mobility opportunities. Some of those folks that went out with the masters are now making $120,000, $150,000 a year. And I'm very pleased for them for getting promoted.
Filling that need, and again, having the background to move into those spots. That's exactly right. You can make a good living, do something you love, and help people. So a little bit about So I actually have the numbers here. You graduated 23 PhDs, 100 master's students, and over 300 undergraduates. What professional advice would you give to somebody, going into the program or going into the profession, that what's next? Where would you focus your energy?
Right. A young person getting in, what I've learned over the years is the more letters you have behind your name, the more they pay you. Okay. The harder you work, the luckier you get. Mm-hmm. I would encourage them to be certified professional ergonomists or CSPs, or what's the term, Steve, for lean manufacturing? Six Sigma?
Yeah, well, that's one part. That's half of it. I'm in the Toyota program, the first one, and we have a certified lean ergonomist.
And I think that's important. I would encourage them to do that. I would encourage them to build interpersonal relationship skills, team building, learn about coaching, because in my opinion, ergonomics is about coaching, okay? I feel like I've coached all of my students about how to get along in life, how to be successful, team building, confidence, interpersonal relationship, professional skills in speaking. All of those things are important for the success of somebody working in the field of ergonomics.
Yeah, I agree in that. And you see that with CPEs, you see it with CIHs, CSPs, and that, to get that education, I wanted to talk just a little bit about the roles of the certification. You had mentioned earlier that you have some ideas about the CPE, about.
Right. I think the role of certification is extremely important. We need to have a conversation regarding the continuing education BCP, because I think once you pass the test and you showed you've done work in the field and you're accredited as a certified professional ergonomist, that the continuing education is not as important as continuing in the field. I think it needs to be recognized that if you're continuing in the field and you can show work that you've continued in the field, and less emphasis on attending conferences and getting certified at the conference. It's very expensive to go to a conference. It's $2,500 to $3,500 to go to Orlando for that conference. And to think that you're going to go there every year, that's a tremendous amount of money. And you got to justify that for your company or for yourself. For example, me, I retired in 2013. I continued to do expert witnessing and go from plaintiff to defendant in that regard. I usually do 40 plaintiff and about 20 defendant. So I do both sides of the aisle in that regard. But I'm using the tools every day. I'm using the NICE lifting guide equation. I'm using push-pull information and delivery mutual insurance. I'm calculating the initial speed to push a grocery cart, the sustaining speed to push a grocery cart, things falling on people's heads, slip, trips, falls, all of the poles, unsecured gate, pole across the top of the gate, unsecured. All of those things is the study of work. And so I think we need to recognize that if you're still working in the field, we need to recognize that as part of the CE process and something to think about. And I think BCPE is looking at it, and I hope that they do something about it, because our membership should be, in my opinion, 2,500 to 3,000 people worldwide at least. And I'm afraid that we've lost in the past as many members as we took in. Now we're 300 above that, but I think that's still unsatisfactory in terms of certification. There are many more board certified CSPs rather, safety engineers, than there are ergonomists by far. And so I think we need to promote it more, and I think we need to expand our membership and also retain our membership.
Yeah, and I saw Tom Ralph shaking his head. So I know that you all have had discussions, and there's some good things going on there. So just a couple more things. You talked about your strength conditioning program, and how does ergonomics play into that?
Strength and conditioning, I was hired 15 years into my career by the athletic department to help strength and conditioning in terms of performance analysis. I was one of the first ones to work in the analytics, as they call them today in sports. And what we looked at was using video in that regard to allow the coach to coach him twice. In other words, if you look at a javelin thrower, for example, the coach is going to watch them throw, but I was standing next to him with an iPad recording the throw. So when he or she finished the throw, they could look at the iPad and go almost frame by frame or slow motion to see what he wanted to coach he or she about in regards to throwing the javelin. So you got to coach them twice. If you were diving, you dove into the pool, you got out of the pool, and you looked up on the big screen, and it showed you your dive. The coach got to see it, the athlete got to see it, and they did better as a result. The same for a goalkeeper in soccer. And so I put cameras in at all of the athletic facilities where it was appropriate to put cameras in, like in baseball, softball, tennis, swimming and diving, soccer, all of those different programs. And we did individual videos in track and field for javelin, shot, heavyweight throws, high jump, pole vaulting, etc. We even did some starts for our dash people to look at their starts and their first 2 steps or 3 steps out of the blocks. In that, we used a high performance camera to do 1,000 frames per second. You get right down to the finite analysis. A tenth of a second is between first and second or second and third. So it became obvious that we needed to do analytics. We did a helmet-mounted camera on the quarterback to see what he saw when he went back to drop for a pass. Did he see the safety coming over? Did the corner drop back? Did the linebacker drop back? What was going on in that regard? So we were at the leading edge of analytics at Texas A&M, just doing the simple, basic stuff. Today, they've far surpassed that with heart rate monitors on the players, with chips in their shoulder pads, et cetera, monitoring their conditioning, monitoring their speed, et cetera.
Yeah.
If you want to take a look at some slides there, I'll show you some athletes that I was involved with. That's Coach Mike Clark, who's the performance coach for the Detroit Lions, and that's Dan Campbell, who played tight end for Texas A&M and is now the head coach of the Detroit Lions. Mike was mentioned to me, and I mentioned him earlier. Go to the next slide, please. That's Ari Incy. By the way, she is an ergonomist. She works for North Carolina State University Ergonomics Center, Colorado. Probably one of the smartest students that I've ever had. She graduated undergrad from Rice. She was an 8-sport athlete in high school, if you can imagine. She was an Olympian in the Japanese Olympics and is quite the young lady and still determined in trying to do her best to make another Olympic showing. And I'm quite proud of her, all that she's doing in ergonomics. She's very good. She probably needs to get a PhD, and I'm hopeful that at some point in time she does, because she's that smart and that good. Next one, please. This is Maggie Malone. She's a 3-time Olympian in the javelin throw. She was national champion in the javelin for a number of years. I think her record was recently broken, but she's excellent. You can see her angle of toss, the javelin, is a lower angle than ours. And so you want to find out what that angle of the javelin is when you're throwing it. And the only way you can do that is do video, and then you can do later analysis on it to determine what that angle of throw was. And then you can determine how far it went. More can be done in that regard from an analytical standpoint than we're able to do today. Fortunately for Ari, she trains at the Olympic site in Colorado. Next one, please. Shane Leckler was a punter for the Oakland Raiders and also for the Texans. He was eligible for the Hall of Fame this year. Hopefully he'll make it next year. He'll be the second. If he does, he'll be the second punter ever taken. The first punter taken was Ray Guy, and he's the only punter taken in the NFL Hall of Fame. And I remember working with him, and the only thing I can tell you for sure is I didn't hurt any one of them. And they appreciated me doing the video for them and showing that on the iPad. Then they were also able to download it and study that at home or in their athletic facility. And so we provided that not only for them, but for the coaches and himself or herself as well. And so that's why video or photographs are extremely important in doing any evaluation. And I don't hardly do any evaluations without doing photographs, measurements, and video. particularly video. Video doesn't lie. It tells you the way it is, the way they work. It tells you how productive they are or not. It gives you the opportunities to determine how you can improve productivity. And so I'm a great believer in video, particularly in sports and particularly in studying ergonomics.
Yeah, I agree with you. We use video, and again, you can slow it down frame by frame, but yeah, that's a big deal. If you look at your legacy, and you definitely got a legacy, all the things we talked about today. What would you say you've done that's had the biggest impact on our profession?
In our profession, the biggest impact I've had is with, first of all, my family, my wife, my daughters, my son, my daughter Katie. My family is my biggest legacy. The next legacy is the academics of my former students. And the neutral posture chair. If you want to learn more about neutral posture, you go to neutralposture.com. If you want to talk about chairs and ordering a chair or looking at the opportunities for an ergonomics lab or whatever, you would look at C. Coker, C-O-K-E-R, at neutralposture.com. My grandson, that's the way that rolls. My children teaching my grandchildren ergonomics. My grandchildren teaching my great-grandchildren ergonomics. That's what I'm most proud of from an ergonomic standpoint is that. My legacy is my academic family, and it's the academic families well over 1,000 that I can count with Rob Thomas, Ryan Craig, Alicia Crumpton, Lawrence Schultz, Dr. Amendola, who worked at Nation now retired. They are the ones, along with Dr. Mark Bendon and Adam Pickens. Soon to be Martha Parker, as we speak. She'll graduate in August with a PhD in interdisciplinary engineering with a focus on ergonomics. Hopefully, we're setting her up to take the place of Mark Bendon when he decides to retire at some point. Mark, by the way, is a fellow in Inventor organization. He just became a fellow. That's great news. He's got a bunch of patents. He also sold a patent that did well for himself to the university. And so they are my legacy.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And you started out with your family, and that's the biggest part. So one more question. If you could change, one major thing about how businesses approach ergonomics today, what would that be?
What I would change is to increase the use of productivity, quality, marketing, customer service, measuring those things to come up with cost-benefit analysis. I think we spend too much time on preventing injury, illness without any look at all on the productivity, the quality, the delivery, the customer service, the marketing, et cetera. I believe that we need to do body part discomfort surveys. I think we need to do computer-based training and actually monitor the success of that training. I think the future holds that eventually the remote employee should have the ability to order ergonomic furniture for the remote location, and that we've got to step up, take responsibility for that. It's important to us from a productivity standpoint, quality, delivery, customer service, and marketing. And we need to start measuring. And so I believe those are the things that I would recognize in that regard. Again, Rebecca reminded me of this, and this is what I'm kind of my charging mantle, so to speak. She said that you've changed office ergonomics as we know it, and you raised the standard as we are today. And so everybody is more productive and more comfortable because of you. And what high quality praise that is to come from Rebecca to me. And I recognize that. I'm humbled by that, but it is what it is. And my students are what they are, and they do what they do as a result of this. And so the more people I can get in a neutral posture chair or ergonomic furniture that we design, whether it be the ab stool, whether it be the big and tall chair or the small chair for under 5'1", or regular ergonomic chair or standby furniture and the neutral posture chair into, the better off this country's going to be, the better off this world is going to be. And so that's it.
Dr. Congleton, I cannot tell you how flattered I am to have gotten your time today. Again, I've been a fan since for a quarter of a century, and I didn't have an opportunity to go through your program, but every single student that you've had that I've met, I'm totally impressed, and that's such a huge honor. And Tom, I want to let you know I certainly appreciate you joining us. If you have anything else to, I know you got your chairs. It sounds like you're doing something with your chairs, but yeah, I'm very grateful, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I appreciate you guys, and we'll we may do a follow-up one day. This has been great. And my closing word is I couldn't agree more with Rebecca. You've literally changed the office work environment and the seated work environment, not necessarily just in the office. Musculoskeletal disorders hurt. They are disabling, and you've went a long way in preventing that. So.
And I appreciate you, Steve, for doing this and allowing me this opportunity. Hopefully we did a good job, and we helped some people out here.
Yeah. And you and I are talking, I have several people in academia that use your podcast as part of their training, or use our podcast. And so to get, a history lesson like this, as far as, where it started and where you brought us, I think it's going to be well received, and I'm honored. And again, thank you all, with the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. We'll see you next year.
Okay.